Support for CFO Thought Leader comes from Plantful and U.S. Bank.
Hi, it's Michelle Hook, the CFO of Portillo's, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 1049.
Each pharmacy put their own plan together. It's grassroots, and it's not something that we push down to the pharmacies and say, you need to have X and Y. Look at where you ended. What are you going to add from a sales standpoint? What labor do you need to support that? And how do we drive increased growth while achieving leverage? So that's sort of the guidance we put out, and our teams that run the businesses go through this planning process. It's 3 or 4 months, and it sort of dovetails in December to an overall plan. So I think, as simple as that sounds, most companies don't do that. And it's just the basic bedrock and foundation, I think, that's led to us being successful.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with David Morris, CFO and Executive Vice President of GRDN Pharmacy. When it came to the public markets, no one can accuse David Morris and his seasoned C-suite colleagues, Fred Burke and Kendall Forbes, of being impatient. GRDN Pharmacy, a company they built from the ground up, recently raised $112 million in an IPO, listing on the New York Stock Exchange. The milestone reflects a culmination of over 3 decades of ever-thoughtful strategic decision-making. You'll hear about their IPO and much more on today's episode. Get after this. Are you tired of manual, fragmented, and time-consuming expense management processes? Then the U.S. Bank Commercial Rewards Card might be right for your business. More than just a card, it's an all-in-one card, expense, and travel management solution that replaces outdated expense management methods with a single intuitive platform. Specifically designed to scale with your growing business, it provides the control and real-time insights into spend that you need. It integrates with your existing tools, lets you set custom spend policies, captures all expenses automatically, and liability is kept at the corporate level. Employees can even book travel right in the platform. You also get to choose your rewards, either points or rebates, all while saving money with no annual fee. So why wait? Manage your cash flow better and streamline your business operations today with the U.S. Bank Commercial Rewards Card. Visit usbank.com/CFO to learn more. We're pleased to have David Morris back with us. David is the CFO and Executive Vice President of GRDN Pharmacy. He was one of our earliest interviews, and we thank him for that. Way back when not every CFO was prepared to jump on a podcast back in 2015 or whenever we spoke in the early days here, David. But welcome back. Thank you for being with us.
Jack, I appreciate it, and congratulations to you for the tremendous success that you've had over the last 10 years. It's amazing to see what you've done. My kids were even able to see some of the podcasts we've done over the years. So I think that's great things about what you've done, and maybe for me to survive for 10 years, I don't know what to say about that.
Well, it's amazing. You've seen this company grow up around you. So we're looking forward to talking to you about that. I'm going to begin just where we did last time, to be honest, because I think we have a whole new group of listeners that we've acquired over the years that just haven't heard your story, David. But just to look back in time, we'll begin there, before GRDN, perhaps, and tell us about some of those experiences which put you on this path to become a finance leader. What was it that advanced you?
Well, I think my career started with EY in Atlanta, and spent 6 to 7 years there and really enjoyed it. But had, a craving for, getting actually into the business more on a prospective basis and an entrepreneurial standpoint. And when I left EY, I joined my first entrepreneurial company in Birmingham. It was actually a large HMO, and we put together a PBM to manage the drug benefit. And, that led to my current company and my partners, Kendall Forbes and Fred Burke. We joined forces about 30 years ago with another startup in the healthcare distribution, Central Pharmacy Services, a successful 10-year run there. The company was ultimately sold to Cardinal Health. And shortly after that, we started GRDN Pharmacy 20 years ago. And I think, really what's driven me over the years is to, look beyond the financial side of it and really roll my sleeves up and get into the business, not only from an operations standpoint, a sales standpoint, and a human capital standpoint, because those are the drivers that have made it successful. So we've had a successful business, and then along the way, we've, surrounded it with very strong financial metrics, systems, and people, and all that has led to the success. So while I started in finance, I kid with our folks here that I really am not that much into finance, the day-to-day, as we've gotten this company to the size and scope that it is.
Did you think that way back when? Did you think of yourself as a senior finance executive, or did you think of yourself more as an entrepreneur?
I think of myself more as an entrepreneur, and really what drove me to really get into accounting, I thought it would be a great backbone to be an entrepreneur. You've got the foundation of the finance and accounting, and I think you need that to run a successful business, along with many other things. So that's what really drove me in the finance direction.
When did you intersect? Was it with Fred Burke that you intersected at the earlier company? And again, he's the CEO of the company, but the two of you have really collaborated now for a few decades.
It's really 30 years. In 1993, I met Fred Burke and Kendall Forbes and came on board just as Central Pharmacy Services was formed. And it was a healthcare distribution business that focused on nuclear medicine. So Fred Burke, Kendall Forbes, and myself, we've been working together for over 30 years. A nice compliment. We all bring different things to the table. Obviously don't always agree, but that's what's made it so successful, is the camaraderie, but also the different disciplines that we all bring to the table.
Yeah, there's something to that, and I'm sure it's been challenging at times. I'm only mentioning, the Kendall's more like the operations side of the business, your finance. At the same time, and of course, Fred is the CEO, and we had chatted with him years ago about this business. And my point is that none of you got discontented. You're all part of the same company today. So unlike other entrepreneurs who kind of thought it was time to pass the baton or move on or what have you, all you folks still have sort of an ambition to continue to grow this company. Am I right? Or is there something else in the mix here? Something?
Yeah. I mean, my advice and what I've learned over 30 years, starting a company from the ground floor is extremely difficult. I mean, the first 5 to 10 years, extremely rough. I think in any business, as most businesses fail. We've had several that have been successful. This is Fred's third that's been very successful. So I think it's fun, but I've changed jobs probably 20 different times. So what I did, 18 or 19 years ago, is much different than what I do today. And I think that's exciting. We've built a team of people who, can really run and do things much better than most of us. And I think surrounding oneself with really smart, capable human capital is critical to be successful. I mean, you got to be willing to let go. You have to, move away from the credit and let people flourish. And I think that's what we've been able to do successfully here. And we'll talk about as we go through the session here. I think the best is yet to come.
Well, you said something there that I thought was interesting. If you look over the last 19 years, all the different roles you've had, at the same time, you kind of reinvented the CFO role along the way. There were parts of the business that you realized were so critical that you wanted to address with your sort of financial mind. And then when it came time, you could find the right person to do what you were doing, and you could move on to the other part of the business that, as a finance leader, you understood needed to be on your to-do list. How am I doing? Am I close to what you were just describing? And the only reason I say that is I think you didn't get bored. There was always something new for you. So like an entrepreneur who wants to go on to the next thing, how am I doing? Yeah?
No, you're doing great. And we're not bored today. And we'll talk about, with us, having gone public about a month ago, there are many, many new challenges that are facing us today. So, over 20 years, not only in the finance function, but in the purchasing, treasury, human capital, benefits, IT, data analytics, we've built all these teams of people to help us run this complicated, pharmacy distribution business that provides very high value add to the customers and, facilities that we service. So, we've built it piece by piece. We've brought people in who can run the areas, and then we've moved on to continue to grow and build other things. We've got so many things we're working on now to make this business of, fairly large size and scale, make it better. So, we're continuing to do what we've done the last 20 years, and there's probably more opportunity than I've ever seen.
I want to come back and ask you about the IPO and the decision making. Why did it happen? Why now? But first, I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about GRDN Pharmacy. We haven't asked you we always ask this sort of bold question. Tell us about this company. What is it about? And give us some idea of the size of it and the number of employees.
Yeah, let me start just by the industry that we're in. We're in, drug distribution. In the U.S., there's over $500 billion of drugs sold in the U.S., okay? That's retail, hospital, specialty. The segment we're in is long-term care pharmacy. It's about $25 billion of the $500 million, okay? And we focus specifically, and we're really purpose-built to serve assisted living pharmacies. While we serve skilled, we serve behavioral health, we work with hospice groups. About 2/3 or more of our business is assisted living, and that's where we were founded. Our first pharmacy in Phoenix, Arizona was a pharmacy focused on serving the assisted living community with a gentleman named John Saliba. And we've grown from that pharmacy in Phoenix to 50 pharmacies today, around the country, focused on assisted living communities. And with our growth, this year we'll be well in excess of $1 billion. I mean, our financials are public. We still only serve about 12% of the U.S. market. So that's a theme that I'll talk about today. While we've grown, our company's been successful, we still have a very small percent of the U.S. market, i.e., there's the opportunity for us taking 12 to 20 to 30 to 40.
What was the determinants for the company to go public? What was it? Was it,
we can go public, but not until we're $1 billion in annual revenue?
Jack, it's something we have looked at and evaluated probably 7-8 years. We've been doing this for 20 years. So that's a long time to be growing a company. We've gone from, 50 million in revenue to over $1 billion, a lot of change. We have 230 employee shareholders, okay? And, after 20 years, one, would like to have a better handle on what their ownership could be worth. So that's one thing to get a valuation for, the currency that people own. We're heavily employee owned. The second is we've got 12% of the market. We've built a heck of a business, the platform to manage this low margin distribution business. And we want to continue doing what we're doing. So, do we, options, you could bring a private equity group in, that would create a lot of leverage. We have little to no leverage on the company now. We could potentially partner with a larger strategic, company, but we as a group wouldn't be able to go from 1 to 2 to 3 billion and keep growing the business. So it's so we can keep doing what we're doing because there's a huge opportunity. And then also to, provide a valuation for these employees that own a substantial part of the business today.
As a finance leader, can you give us a number of milestones for the finance function itself? When did you build the FP&A team? When were you the FP&A team? How did it, as you brought on talent, where did David think talent within finance was worth the investment, and where was it not necessary?
It's been a fine balance. We're still working on it today. So as people listen to this, if they have interest in joining a successful growing company, give Jack a call. So I'll plug that. But we've been investing probably for the last 10 or 15 years. You start with our business planning process. We've been doing that really since we started. When we had 5 locations, we had a rigorous business planning process. Today, we have a rigorous business planning process. So that's critical to having the foundation to go public. So business plan, okay? And, 10 years ago, we started investing in a data warehouse when we didn't have really the capital to do it. Taking all of the dispense data, purchasing, operating, labor, and starting our relational database so we could manage the business internally. I'll talk more about what we've done externally with our database in a minute. So investing in the data warehouse, and that drove dashboards to manage, revenue, scripts, labor, delivery, purchasing, and we need all that to manage the business to the business plan so we've got the profitability to later go public. Okay, so all this kind of builds on each other. Okay, about 8 years ago, we decided we needed a complete, system that incorporated finance and human capital. And I talked before when we got together about Workday. So we implemented Workday 6 to 8 years ago. We did human capital first, then we did the finance piece. So we have the foundation to manage this in a public environment. We made the decision to begin having EY do PCLB audits about 7 years ago. So that's another investment. All these things build along the way. And we've been investing in people, technical accounting, enhancing our controller function. We talked about before, we have, controllers in all 50 of our locations, CPA, finance types to help run this business so, we can be public one day. So we've been making that investment over the last 10 years. And you mentioned FP&A. We began working on that. We've always sort of had internal FP&A, but we've had to start working toward external FP&A, whether it's the investor community, the analyst community, and we've been working on that the last 3 or 4 years. So all this builds over a 10 or 15 year period to us actually getting effective and closing the deal at the end of September, about a month ago. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's a little long-winded.
You emphasized more than once this rigorous business planning process. When you compare to your peers out there, if you're ever networking at a CFO event or other organizations, how they tackle planning, what is it that sets yours apart? What is it that makes it so rigorous? What are you telling us?
I mean, it's first of all, we use a tool that's part of Workday called Adaptive Insights. And our teams, our leadership teams in each pharmacy put their own plan together. It's grassroots. And it's not something that we push down to the pharmacies and say, you need to have X and Y. Look at where you ended. What are you going to add from a sales standpoint? What labor do you need to support that? And how do we drive increased growth while achieving leverage? So that's sort of the guidance we put out, and our teams that run the businesses go through this planning process. It's 3 or 4 months, and it sort of dovetails in December to an overall plan. So I think, as simple as that sounds, most companies don't do that, and it's just the basic bedrock and foundation, I think, that's led to us being successful.
Because of the nature of this business, it's kind of unique. And you were mentioning those controllers before. I do recall you had a phrase, you called them super controllers. And they're more like, they're finance leaders of these pharmaceutical.
They're the finance leader for each of our pharmacies.
And they're involved in that planning process. That's what I'm getting at. When you talk about that, when you were talking about, are they all involved in it, or
they would lead the process for the pharmacy in their metro area. Think about, we have 50 separate businesses. Each of our pharmacies, it's not like Walgreens or CVS. It's probably 20,000 square feet. Think light industrial. There's automation in the pharmacy for fulfillment. And we have on average, 75 to 100 employees in each location, and we'll serve a 2 to 3 hour radius around the metro area, depending on the traffic patterns.
That type of role, do you bring them together annually? Those controllers? You do? And what is that event called? Is it something broader than just the super controller conference? I don't know.
We call it our director of finance and administrative meeting, and we meet once a year. And then we also have regional meetings, and then that position, along with our top 250 leaders, will get together once a year. So we have several meetings throughout the year, but there's one finance, there's an operations meeting, we have a sales meeting, we have human capital meetings, IT, purchasing is another big meeting we have. These are all very important areas that contribute to running a successful business.
One of the interesting things I think we've talked about way back when was that, given that you have your lines of sight and your people out there, the finance team across the country, you can see the most successful businesses and understand better some of the KPIs they use to see how they're growing their business more effectively. And you can share that knowledge internally. And maybe it's a particular KPI that someone discovered can really reveal more if we study it more frequently, regularly. I don't know. Is there anything?
Well, we compare, all of the pharmacy operations to each other. And I think we talked about before, these financial executives in each pharmacy, they're really operational focused. I mean, I would say an operational finance executive. So they're focused on drivers for revenue. They're heavily involved in the purchasing function. I mean, those are two complicated areas of our business. So that's probably where they spend the most of their time. And then when you come on down the P&L, there are various aspects, labor, delivery, those are big pieces in the SG&A line, and they spend a tremendous amount of time there. So what we do is provide them the tools to effectively monitor and analyze those, 5 or 6 key areas that make their business successful.
David, we want to, you mentioned the future as well. We want to talk to you about AI. And is there something you can share with us about how GRDN will be able to leverage AI for competitive advantage going forward? Is there something that might already be part of the approach? What would you be able to share with us? Anything related to AI and how you're going to leverage it for competitive advantage?
I mean, I think you go back to our data warehouse. So that gave us the foundation and bedrock for jumping into this AI opportunity with both hands. And I think we are currently testing and using it in customer facing modes. I mean, you think about the residents that we serve, the average age is 87 years old, okay? They're on 13 or 14 meds per month. So there's a lot of data there. And what we're using AI for are things like falls risk management. We can tell based on the prescriptions that someone is taking where they're at a higher risk for falls. Okay. So that's an area that can enhance what our pharmacists and staff are already doing. So there are other areas that we're looking at that can dramatically transform our approach to medication safety and early detection of, health problems in these senior adults. So I think we're on the cutting edge of using this data, implementing AR to give warnings not only to our pharmacists, but nurses and the medical professionals who are taking care of these frail and elderly residents in the assisted living communities that we're serving.
Just as far as your post IPO CFO mindset, we might expect that you had an idea how much of your time was going to be spent educating the analyst community and shareholders out there. But
even you're surprised by some of the responsibilities that follow going public in relation to communication and building those types of relationships.
Yeah, and it's something, Jack, we've been working on educating the investment community, analysts, probably the past 2 or 3 years, heavily about GRDN. But I think, we're just getting started now that we've gotten the IPO effective. Our offering was well oversubscribed. I think there are a lot of people interested in our story and the growth that we've experienced the last 10 or 15 years. We're going to keep doing that as we move forward. So I think there's a lot of excitement. Fortunately, we talk about changing jobs. Fred's got a new role. I've got new roles. We're changing. We've got a very strong team of financial executives here who are focused on the day-to-day. So, a new hat for myself and a few others will be working with the investment community, talking to our investors and educating them and answering their questions as we continue to grow the business. And I think it's something we're looking forward to. I think it will be challenging, and I'm sure there'll be new obstacles and challenges for all of us, but we're excited about it. And we're just getting started. Let's do this in a couple of years, and I can give you more, things that happen and maybe the do's and don'ts, but we're excited about it.
David, permit me to dwell on this just a little bit longer here with you, because I think after building this company for 3 decades, you have just recently entered this new world of public companies.
As I reflect on this, you must have hired an IR executive, or you must have, thought, what resources do we need here? And you folks, I think, have always been very careful when you do that, when you make those types of hires. Can you share any thoughts on, and you mentioned it goes back 2 or 3 years. Again, this is just a real milestone that you folks probably have just debated and talked about for all of the life of the company when that day comes. How am I doing? Am I close to your reality or not really?
It sounds like you've been listening. If you've been here in some of our meetings the past 3 or 4 years, but let's start with FP&A. I mean, we've been data driven. We've had good data the last 10 years, but the last 4 or 5, we've begun developing our own FP&A talent and have promoted some folks in to manage that. And we probably, I'm part of the team. There are probably 8 of us that are working on FP&A, and we work it as a team. So we've got a great group of people working and managing the underlying data, developing the message, the talking points of, really how we're telling the story. So we've got a great team to do that. On the IR side, we made the decision to bring in an outsourced partner 3, probably 4 years ago to help us. So we've got it outsourced. They're locked arm in arm with us from an IR standpoint and are working with us and have been working with us the past 3 years as we've been working and modeling and working with the analysts now that we're talking with investors, they're helping us with that. So FP&A, we've developed over many years internally. IR, we're working with an external firm, and we'll continue to modify and expand that as we go through the next 6, 12, 24 months.
Looking back, given all of what you went through, what was achieved, tips, advice?
The one thing I would say, start early. I mean, we've been working on this a lot longer than most, but I feel good that we've been working it 3 or 4 years. A lot of companies may spin up and try to go public in 6 months, and I think that would be a daunting task.
That wouldn't fly with this management team, I have a feeling. This was a very, I wouldn't say cautious, maybe thoughtful management team.
Yeah, I think we're deliberate maybe to a fault, but what I've seen, it's paid off. I mean, we may move too slow. People ask, why don't you do 7 acquisitions a year versus 3 or 4 new ones? We have increased that the last 2 or 3 years, but it's, we've always had the financial capital to grow the business. What we focus on is the human capital, and we have to be very careful that we have the right people, they're like-minded to help us continue to grow the business. So we've been thoughtful and deliberate to a fault sometimes, probably. But, our growth has been strong. So we could have grown twice as fast and maybe had things blow up, and we're happy with the way things have gone. And that's the way we're going to continue to run the business.
Well, we always like to ask for a finance strategic moment, which again could have happened anytime during the
last 3 decades even. And it might have been this past September at the IPO, or it might have been 2 decades earlier. What would you share? What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
I think, you look at what we've done here. We poured the concrete. We have kept the business growing and growing, profitably, so that we could be in a position to affect the public offering. So I think, an aha moment, a finance strategic moment, you always have to be investing. Make sure you got the basics. Make sure the business is growing. And when the time is right, if you have a nice business that's growing with great people and a great industry, then, things will come together. And it took us a while, but, things came together. And I think, there's no quick hit, no quick fix. And that would be my message to people. Hang in there, be deliberate, and, it will work out. And I'm talking about, there are thousands of people in our company that have had to be deliberate, keep working, keep growing the business as we executed and ultimately got the company public.
ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately. Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com/CFO Thought Leader to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. We're going to move to what we refer to as our mentoring round. And I want to ask you a different question. Usually I ask what surprised you about the CFO role, but you've been in the role too long, David, to ask that. That first 60 days, what surprised you about it? But I'd rather ask you about sort of these different chapters that you've led in the role. And whether this next chapter, tell us about this next chapter, where you're going to be focused post-IPO. What is your day look like?
That's probably what's made it fun. I'll go back, 10 years ago. Let's look at what did I focus on 10 years ago, okay? And one thing that's consistent, 10 years ago, we were focused on human capital, finding the right partners, making sure we got the right people to run the business, okay? And that's always going to be a focus. We focused on business development, and, I probably spent 20% of my time on the finance role. Fast forward to today, we're still going to be working on human capital. It's a big role for many of us here because as we grow and change, our organization is changing. We're going to be, now that we're public and are going to be positioning the company to double or triple over the next few years, we're going to continue to make changes in the organization, promote people, give them opportunities to grow. So that's going to be consistent. I'm still going to be involved in business development. My new hat I'm wearing is going to be focused on the investment community, working with our investors, with the analysts, attending conferences. We've got some conferences upcoming in the next couple of months. So that's how my role is going to change. We're the leader in long-term care, assisted living, pharmacy. So that's also a new role for us. We're an industry leader. And really, wearing that hat, carrying that mantle, making sure we've got the voice for the industry is something we also spend time on.
David, I don't know if you're going to like this next question. It's a question we've added since we've last spoke. We want to know something that most people don't know about you. So, what is something most people don't know about David Morris? Your colleagues who've worked with you for 30 years, certainly they know everything about you, but maybe not.
Yeah, one thing I do, probably most people don't know to relax is I enjoy playing the piano. So not that I'm great or anything, but it's something I can do and have a little quiet time and people not asking me a million questions. So I would say the piano.
Is there a particular artist whose music you are likely to play first, or
I mean, it's more pop. I mean, it might be Billy Joel, or I was working on a couple of Eagles songs the other day, so some of the younger listeners may not know, but it's stuff, 80s and 70s type music.
Wonderful. And I have to tell you, you were one of the first CFOs to recommend Patrick Lencioni's one or three of his books. I forget. We're going to ask you for a book selection.
I mean, it's one that someone sent the other day that I've been reading, and I don't know if it's out, on a national basis. It may be, but it's an author, Tim Spiker, The Only Leaders Worth Following. And I mean, the key takeaway in the book is, the majority of your effectiveness comes from who you are, not what you do. So who you are, not what you do. Really back to, how do you treat people and get them to, have a run through the wall mentality. So The Only Leaders Worth Following, Tim Spiker. I would recommend taking a look at that.
Excellent. Thank you. We haven't had it before, so it's an excellent selection for us. Thank you. We're up to our final question, where, as always, we ask you to look forward for the coming 12 months. We'd like to know what your priorities are for that 12-month period as CFO.
Obviously, the priority are the new items of, working with the investment community. So that's a huge one. The second, and probably even more important, is the organization transition that I mentioned. We have grown from 1 to 50 locations, and we need to make changes strategically in the organization to position us to continue to grow the business. And we'll continue to invest in human capital systems, the financial team, to keep changing and growing the business. And we've got to stay focused on what our customers need. These are the residents in our communities, the communities themselves, And then the health plans, like the Cignas, the Aetnas, the United Healthcare, and the payors. So we've got to stay focused on really what our customers need. And we've got a lot of different customers that we serve.
David Morris, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Jack, thank you very much. It's a pleasure catching up again. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Jack here. Hope you've been enjoying our recent episodes of CFO Thought Leader. Please know that I don't take for granted this opportunity to serve you. Your time is valuable, and of course, so is the time of our CFO guests. I'll admit to you on certain weeks, I will pinch myself and say, hey, I get to do this for a living. I speak to all these impressive leaders. Undoubtedly, there are more aggressive interviewers out there, some who leave no stone unturned. But our swim lane is for finance leaders only. And those finance leaders have a unique style of leadership, one that is rooted in the burden of trust. In light of this, finance leaders must take great care not to forfeit this trust as they step into the role of being a more expressive leader. And that is what CFO Thought Leader is really about. That's why I try to remind myself week in, week out, how fortunate I am. Still, I need your help. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Email me your comments at jack@cfothoughtleader.com. And please visit cfothoughtleader.com. You'll find a listener survey right on the nav bar. As always, thank you for listening.